No way he just said this. Kaapo Kakko has spoken out against Peter Laviolette, and it seems like his time as a New York Ranger could be coming to an end. And it seems like the New York Rangers have officially quit on their general manager. We're going to break that down and more in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you who watch these videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor, it's free. Hit that subscribe button and you get to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. And that's right, Kaapo Kakko has officially spoken out, I guess, against Peter Laviolette and management. He is not happy, and it looks like his time in New York could be coming to an end very quickly via trade. And let's dive right into it. Over the last couple games, obviously, he was scratched against the St. Louis Blues just a couple nights ago, and the New York Rangers lost to the Nashville Predators 2-0 last night. And again, I said in my video yesterday that a loss could garner some change, but I don't think a loss to the Nashville Predators or a win against the Nashville Predators would tell you anything about this season that you don't already know. And in terms of Kaapo Kakko, he was scratched the other night, and Peter Laviolette said it was because they needed fresh legs in the lineup. I mean, absolute terrible excuse. I have no idea what that is from Peter Laviolette. Awful. But Kaapo Kakko, in the last 30 games, I guess this doesn't include last night, keep in mind, but he's been pretty great at 5-on-5, honestly. He hasn't been scoring at a very high clip, and we'll get into his stats in a minute. But compared to some of the other players on the team and other players on the team that make a lot of money, he has had a great season, and he's doing it in much less ice time. So he's averaging just under 14 minutes a game. So talking Rangers, obviously, put this out, and Kaapo Kakko needs to be scratched, right? I don't think he was the guy, and there was a couple things that we touched on the last couple days that have been going around. And obviously, one of them is to expect a Kaapo Kakko trade soon. Now, there is a roster freeze coming up this Friday, the holiday roster freeze. So I'm not sure the Rangers at this point, it being Wednesday now and the fact that they just played, are going to make a trade before Friday. But I could see as soon as that roster freeze is lifted after Christmas, I could see something coming down. And I do think that it's going to be a Kaapo Kakko trade at this point, and I'll get into why in just a minute. But let's get into what Kaapo Kakko had to say, because he was obviously scratched. He wasn't available to the media during the St. Louis Blues game. But before the game yesterday against the Nashville Predators, he had some interesting things to say during media availability. And he went on to say, "I'm not too happy. I can say that." He was asked what the coaches said to him when they told him he was going to be scratched. He said, "He needs to do something. I haven't been on the ice too much when the opponents score a goal. I have not been the worst guy, but that was me out of the lineup." Now, this is a loaded quote for me. The first half of it, he is clearly not happy with what's happening in New York. And this kind of tells you and gives you some insight into what's happening in that room right now. Because, a lot of the top guys are happy with the coach. They have a great relationship with the coach. This player does not, because he thinks that he deserves more. And honestly, he didn't play great last season, but I think that, they aren't helping his development along either at some points, right? But all three coaches here in this core era that, have had Kaapo Kakko have scratched him at times and given him a hard time. So there is something to that. He does need to raise his play a little bit, but at the same time, they haven't really helped this player along. The New York Rangers are notorious for having a hard time developing players. And if we go back to the quote, the reason he was scratched was he needs to do something. This one kind of blows my mind. We'll get to the last part in a second because he's calling out his teammates. And honestly, I kind of like it from the player. But he needs to do something. Peter, management, whoever at this point, Kaapo Kakko is doing something. He's barely getting scored on this season when he's on the ice, and he's not even playing in all situations, right? You have guys out there that are making $8 million, over $10 million that are getting scored on in every situation, right? All over the ice. And you look at Panarin, he's putting up amazing points so far this season, but his 5-on-5 play, not great. And the offense, by the way, completely goes away now that Panarin is injured. So that tells you something as well. Kaapo Kakko led the Rangers in shots on goal and expected goals while being dead last in time on ice. And that was last night in Nashville. He is putting together a very sneaky season, a pretty good season. Like his points, we can get into those now before we get into some more advanced analytics. I mean, he only has 14 points in 30 games so far this year. And again, he's averaging just under 14 minutes of ice time. But the biggest thing to me is, yes, he isn't scoring at probably the clip that you would like him to score at, but this is a playoff type player. This is a guy that I think you can use in the playoffs. His physicality, the way he uses his body, the way he drives the net, all these things. I think he is a player who is built for the playoffs. He's a half a point a game player, which isn't bad, especially for the money that he makes. And on top of it, he's not getting scored on when he's on the ice. This is a big thing for the New York Rangers. When he's on the ice, he's usually winning his minutes. So Kaapo is absolutely speaking the truth here, and I think that it's a good thing that he came out and said this yesterday, because he's telling the truth. And at this point, I think he's kind of done with the Rangers. I think he wants a better opportunity somewhere else, and that does suck, because I do believe that this is a good player. And anyway, he has a 1.54 goals against per 60 at 5-on-5, and he's only second to Filipino on the team with for Rangers with at least 20 games played this season. He's second to Adam Edstrom amongst forwards in expected goals against per 60. So, and Adam Edstrom is not playing a lot. He plays on the fourth line, so those are kind of skewed as well, those numbers. But Kaapo Kakko 5-on-5 has been a really good player for the Rangers this year. Him, Will Cooley, and Filipino have been their best players and spread around different lineups or lines, last night. But that, like, you can see it on the ice, the eye test, and you can see it in the advanced numbers. He's telling the truth. So if we go back to the quote, the last thing I want to touch on as well, that Kaapo said is, I haven't been on the ice too much when the opponents score a goal. I have not been the worst guy. And he's calling out his teammates here. And he's also calling out, I guess, the coaching staff at this point, that, hey, I haven't even been the worst guy. Why am I sitting tonight? And I think that speaks volumes. Not only is that him calling out his teammates, holding them accountable, which I like, because I've seen a couple things on Twitter and online the last couple of days. You shouldn't be calling out your teammates like that. I don't believe in that at all. You have to hold each other accountable if you want to win a Stanley Cup. Look at teams that have won the Stanley Cup over the last couple of years, in the Vegas Golden Knights, the Florida Panthers. They all hold each other accountable, and that's Kaapo Kakko doing this. He's calling out the stuff that makes no sense. So I like this from the player. I like that he said that. He hasn't been the worst player, not even close. I would argue he's been one of their best players all year, which is crazy to say because of his point production. You look at a guy like Panarin, he's putting up more points, yes, but this is a guy who's playing the game the right way in all situations all over the ice, right? He's not getting scored on, and he's putting up obviously half a point a game numbers. And Filipino's been great, a great play driver. He's not getting scored on either. So he is speaking the truth. I think he's done with management at this point. It seems like the players as well have given up on management at this point. I think what the Rangers need is, like Phil says here, to clone Will Cooley like 500 times and then just run them out there and just swap them out every game. Because he was fantastic, I thought, again last night, trying to inject some life into the team with that fight. That was an amazing moment, and the team did nothing with it. It's unbelievable. So this team started 12-4-1 this season, and we're now up to 15-15-1. This has been a tough run. I'm not saying they're blaming it all on Kaapo Kakko, but the fact that Kaapo Kakko gets scratched in the midst of all this with those advanced numbers and his stats, unbelievable. And it seems like again, the team has given up on Chris Drury. But in terms of that, this is from Chris Johnston. I don't have any reason to believe Chris Drury is in danger with the New York Rangers. I think he's very much in charge. Where we go from here is the players have to figure out how to be better, or they're going to keep trading guys. And Kaapo Kakko could be one of those guys. And he went on to say, I hate to say it, it doesn't really matter what the players think. They don't get to choose who builds the team. That's like 3 or 4 rungs above their thoughts, or where their thoughts should be. And I totally agree with that. Like I mentioned in a video yesterday, just to interject here for a second, I'll get to the rest of the quote. Play for the jersey, play for the fans, play for Sam Rosen. This guy, this is his last season. After last season, you're thinking, okay, this is a great team. You're coming into this year. Hopefully they clean a few things up and they can go for a Stanley Cup, hopefully in his last season. I'm not even sure they're going to make the playoffs at this point. That is sad. Sam Rosen seemed so dejected on the broadcast last night. It was really upsetting to hear. And Chris Johnson continued, I can't think of a situation that I know where a player got a GM fired ever. And I think that's the thing here. I said in a video yesterday, you either trade all the top guys or you get rid of the GM, right? I don't think the GM's going anywhere. That's just the fact of the matter at this point in time. And again, he's made a couple moves that, yes, are unpopular, but I think were just business and the best for the team, honestly. You had to get out from under a couple of those contracts. So say what you want about that. I'm not defending Chris Drury. I think he's made some pretty sloppy moves as well. But this is a situation where if the team thinks that they're just going to, fold it in and then the GM will get fired and they'll start playing again, I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't think that's the case at this point in time. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think Kaapo Kakko could be on his way out of New York at this point pretty soon. Might not be this week, could be right after the roster freeze. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And again, seems like it's all mental with this team right now. Ryan Lindgren was asked after the morning skate yesterday, what's going on with the team. And he said it shouldn't be hard to keep our focus right now. We should be driven to get out of this. We should be doing whatever it takes every single game to get out of this, battling like hell to get out of it. You saw that tonight. I thought we battled. I believe this was actually after the St. Louis game, excuse me. But I thought we battled, but it's just not going our way right now. It's our job to keep getting back to work and doing what we can. And that is from Ryan Lindgren. So again, it's all mental tonight, or this season, I should say. And Braden Schneider even said that after the game as well last night, that it seems like it's all mental right now. It is. It's absolutely mental. It's a psychological warfare, and I'm not sure Chris Drury is going to be the one who's going to take the hit in this situation. It's going to be very interesting, and you know what? It's unfortunate. I didn't want to see Kaapo Kakko go, but it seems like this is coming to a head here, and tensions have gotten to a boiling point in New York. But let me know in the comments what you think of Kaapo Kakko potentially being traded. There's a lot of rumblings around the Western Conference. It could be, Minnesota. I've heard Chicago as well. So it's going to be very interesting to keep an eye on. But let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.